This is Chris Collinsworth. Be sure to check out the PFF College podcast as our experts provide insight on all the league's top stories. Every game, every player, every play. Download and subscribe on iTunes or your favorite provider.
Hello and welcome back to the PFF podcast. As you probably realize by now, I am not David Tuckman. This is Mike Renner. As we alluded to on Monday's podcast, this is not going to be the normal preview podcast that we do on Thursdays. Obviously, there's not a game this week to preview as we're a week and a half away from the Super Bowl. This will be a little different than a normal podcast, somewhat of a preview of what we'll be doing this offseason, doing some sort of rundowns of current events. And the only current event going on right now in the NFL world is the Senior Bowl. I'm down here in Mobile, Alabama. Sam Monson is not here. They wouldn't let him into the country, thankfully, probably for the best. So who is here with me right now is fellow senior analyst Steve Palazzolo. You've probably heard him before if you listen to the PFF podcast in years past, or if you listen to the college podcast or the Big Time Throwcast. So Steve, welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back. Hello, everyone on the PFF podcast. This is like the big leagues over here on this podcast. It's good to be back.
Yeah, hopefully we haven't lost too many listeners after introducing Steve here, but hopefully you'll stay with us. And
I brought the listeners through the years. You guys have millions and millions of fans because of the foundation that I helped set, Mike. Come on now.
Thank you for that, Steve. But so we'll be talking about the Senior Bowl here. We're down in Mobile. Been here all week. We got here Monday. Didn't really do anything Senior Bowl-wise Monday, but Tuesday morning we set up for the weigh-in, the highlights of the week, as I like to think of it.
You love the weigh-in.
Love the weigh-in. Every single player here walks across the stage in their underwear, gets their height measured, gets their weight measured, and people tweet about it. So, Steve, give me some of your big takeaways from the weigh-in this week.
It is an interesting event. The entire NFL there. I mean, paint the picture for us, Mike. The entire NFL is sitting there in a stadium-like atmosphere, standing room only, to watch these players. And they've already had their hand size done and their wingspan and stuff, their arm length. And they come out on stage and they get their height. And then there's an announcement for their height, an announcement for their weight. And everybody in the NFL writes down these numbers that are going to be readily available somewhere else anyway. So you probably don't have to write them down on your sheet of paper, but I feel like, that's the proper scouty thing to do. That's
my favorite part about the whole thing is the fact that, so we're sitting kind of in the stands of it. There's chairs around the stage where GMs sit, Ted Thompson's front row. You get all these GMs and coaches in the chairs, and then you have some of the media sitting in the stands, and there's a bunch of media guys around us. I'm not trying to insult them or, I love these guys. They're good guys. But the guys who are tweeting every person's height and weight as if you're at work right now, just refreshing Twitter, waiting to see the next guy's height and weight, it's a little much.
Weigh-in Twitter has one day, Mike. 2 days. We have 2 days of weigh-in Twitter. You've got the Senior Bowl. You have the NFL Combine. And it's very important that everybody gets the height and weight out there as first as possible. You got to be the firstiest to get the height and weight out there. It is an interesting dynamic. Because it's a Tuesday morning. Most of our listeners here probably have real jobs, unless they're sitting at home watching First Take or something like that, which, maybe they are. And maybe they're not interested in the heights and weights of players. Maybe it's only our little inner circle here of football analysts that really care about some of those measurables.
It is very interesting, and truthfully, it does matter to some degree, outliers on either way. If a guy was listed at 6'2" for a few years and came in at 6 foot, if a guy's listed at 185 for a few years, comes in at 169 like Donnell Pumphrey did, that has some merit to it. But at the end of the day, it's dude's heights and weights.
Do you want some real takeaways from it, though?
Well, I would love some real takeaways.
There were some interesting things that actually came out of it. So, 2 cornerbacks that we'll talk about later as potential first-round picks: Jordan Lewis out of Michigan, Desmond King out of Iowa. Both guys have graded unbelievably in our system the last couple of years. Desmond King, I thought, was more of a 6 foot type of corner. I think he was listed at 5'11". So he's not 6 foot, but he's supposed to be taller. Jordan Lewis was listed at 5'10" and felt much smaller on the field. So those two players are actually the same exact height. They're both right at 5'10". So you have Desmond King and Jordan Lewis being at 5'10" and not 5'9". Being at his actual listed weight was a win. Was the quote unquote win of your weigh-in, of your height and weight day. So if you can win, Jordan Lewis was one.
I agree. There are certain positions, corner obviously being one of them, where there are cutoffs. There are actually cutoffs for NFL teams where, if he did measure in at 5'9", some teams would have legitimately taken him off their board. So for some positions that matter, for an offensive lineman weighing 320 between or
you were good at guessing weights.
I was pretty on point for a few. I think the first guy I guessed was Asiata, the guard from Utah. I hit it right on the button. 325. That's your guy. He's my guy now because after that. But
Asiata is also the first guy. He was the fourth guy listed. That was the first guy that I stopped writing down the heights and weights. I realized I do not need to write all of these down. They will be readily available. I don't need them on my trusty sheet, although it makes it hard for me to know exactly what everybody is right now. The other thing, so O.J. Howard won the weigh-in just by look, height, weight, and that everything looked good.
Body habitus is probably the reason why everyone's there. People are looking, how is that 240 pounds? What does it look like on you? Do you look fat?
Something to it.
Or do you look, ripped up like Rambo on it?
There is at least one NFL coach that will also take the walk across the stage and grade it, put a number to it, and try to almost predict how well this guy's going to play football. So, hey, look, analytics, man. You can use analytics any which way. Sometimes you do it on the walk across the stage.
That is one of my favorite stories. But the weigh-in was just one portion of the day. That was that Tuesday morning. Since then, I have been basically grading every single practice. I've been in a dark room. I've made it to one practice total since then because I've been actually working hard here, whereas Steve...
What do you mean?
So I've been doing the one-on-one grading, some of the grading from the practices. That's the reason basically PFF is here and sponsoring the thing, is to get our data overlaid on the actual, what's going on from Tuesday to Thursday here, the every play in every practice of this game. So, but Steve, you've been doing something a little different. Tell us what you've been doing the past couple days.
Why do you make it seem like I haven't been working? I've been on the sideline taking pictures next to Dan Marino.
How many articles have you written since you've been here? It's just, I'm curious.
I've contributed to these 2, but we're actually making a move to do a little bit more on the social media side.
Okay, well, I've written 3, but that's why I say that. But
that's fine. I'm proud of you. You're working hard.
But continue. Tell us what you've been doing from the social media
I've been on the sideline, taking pictures with Dan Marino and John Elway. We took a number of close-up videos that we got to tweet out, and some of the stuff's coming from the PFF Instagram account, the PFF College Twitter account. We're going to try to do more on our Snapchat account. What's that? PFF Snaps?
PFF_Snaps.
_Snaps.
I'm in charge of that.
You're in charge of that, but we're also probably going to take it over tomorrow and try to use the Snap face and create some stories and all that. So we're trying to do a little bit more on the social media aspect and really take in and bring everybody into the week. We did a nice little Periscope yesterday morning for about 25 minutes. Took a lot of questions. I did a Periscope last night. Took a lot of Q&A. I'm supposed to do one tonight, too, actually. Got to get that in as well. So we're trying to keep everybody informed and let you feel like you're down here because you mentioned you guys are in the dark room grading. Just to sum that up for people, we do have this nice sponsorship, this agreement with the Senior Bowl. We are grading every single snap of practice, and those results we're going to make available to the public as well, and all of our draft publications during draft season. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on down here.
No, yeah, I complain out of jest. It's been a lot of fun. In that dark room, actually, it's the Exos Digital, so they provide all the video for us, and it's GMs in there, coaches in there. There's 6 or so projectors that they come in, watch tape. John Dorsey was sitting down with Ted Thompson. They were going over some tape together, talking about who's going to be the next GM of the Packers, probably. I don't know.
Oh, boy.
Dorsey.
Any dirt there?
No, nothing to report officially, but they were watching tape together all of Tuesday night. So interesting stuff there. But so after grinding all the tape, after watching all the practices, Steve, who has stood out to you? Because that's the reason why we're here, to find the next great player.
Yeah, so the next great players. Who has stood out? It's almost difficult to take it all in. So we all kind of split up position groups and focus on different guys. Couple guys that have stood out. We already mentioned O.J. Howard winning the weigh-in. He has been the talk, I'd say, of the week here. Oh, yeah. Would you agree? I mean, that's 100%. The guy. So if he's a first-round tight end, we'll talk a little bit more about the guys that can all go in the first round in general. But, Howard has shown the speed on the fields, the length, and just everything you want from an elite tight end. And already in our system, our number one run block grade last year in the entire FBS. So he's shown that he can do it. He's a good blocker at the line of scrimmage and on the move. And of course, Alabama fans have been begging for Alabama to throw the ball to him the past couple of years because he's a very good receiver, but he's just been underutilized in that system.
I 100% agree. I believe he's been probably the most talented player here. To me, he's sort of a Jared Cook type player who can actually catch the ball and can actually block a little bit. He did the pass rushing one-on-ones with Ryan Anderson a few times today and shut him out in pass rushing, which
Anderson's
is pretty impressive for rusher. A guy who's not, he's a tight end. He's not supposed to be a pass protector, but he shut him out in 3 different reps against him. So that's impressive. And then he made a few nice catches. I just think he's, for a tight end prospect, about as solid as there is in the draft right now.
He's had a few drops, and I don't care a ton about that. He's only had 6 drops on 106 catchable passes in his career at Alabama. But it's funny because today, Hugh Jackson, Cleveland Browns head coach, and his coach on the South squad was all over him when he dropped the pass. Making coaching points. Hugh was taken to him just a little bit. Yesterday at practice, he outran 2 defenders for a touchdown, and head coach defensive coordinator Greg Williams was not too happy. A few expletives were thrown at his defensive players, saying 2 guys couldn't cover him on that play. So look, OJ Howard, a lot of buzz and a little extra attention from the coaches so far this week.
Definitely a mismatch. So I've been doing the one-on-ones here, and so that's basically the guys who have stood out to me, and 2 real names that have stood out in those one-on-ones on the offensive side of the ball. One, Forrest Lamp. He only made it through the first day of practice before a high ankle sprain.
Western Kentucky.
But the Western Kentucky left tackle.
Guard, yep.
He's playing guard here this week. I think he could play a tackle in the NFL, but there's almost zero chance he ends up playing tackle. We just never see guys with that limited length, limited height end up at tackle.
He was a weigh-in loser.
And he was a weigh-in loser. Was not tall enough, was not long enough to meet the sort of NFL standards. I think he comes in, plays fantastically at guard in the NFL, though, and he was the best in the one-on-ones I saw yesterday. I think he only had 1 loss in those reps, so he's been good. And then Feeney as well. I think over the course of 2 days, only 2 losses for him. So those 2 really stood out to me. You watched a little more, had a little more varied take. You watched some other things, the DB wide receiver one-on-ones, the full team sections. Who did you see in that you liked?
Yeah, so the other guys, Cooper Kupp is a wide receiver out of Eastern Washington. You're going to start hearing this guy's name. So he's an FCS
Sam talked
player.
about him Monday, too, yeah.
Sam already talked about him?
Sam
has loved this guy.
Big surprise, but... Yeah.
Sam has loved this guy forever. We were tweeting, texting pictures to him to make sure he got the full Cooper Kupp experience down here. But the guy, every time he's played an FBS team, he has dominated. And, he's about 6 feet tall. He's not the guy that you're going to pigeonhole and say he needs to play in the slot. I think he can win on the outside. He's shown a little bit of deep speed, ball skills, just an excellent feel for the game. And I love watching the receiver drills just to see their route running, their shiftiness. And he excels in all of those areas, and it shows on the field, which is great. So Cooper Kupp's been great. The DBs that have shown well, Tre'Davious White out of LSU, our number 1 graded corner out of all FBS players last year, has shown extremely well, though he just hurt his ankle here. We're on Wednesday, so he's going to miss Thursday's practice and probably the rest of the game on Saturday. But excellent showing from him. Can play on the outside, can play in the slot. And then Cam Sutton from Tennessee, we're joking with PFF Bobby Slowick, former NFL coach. He saw 1 rep of Cam Sutton, and that's all Bobby needed to see.
It was a slant and go. I was there with him, yeah.
And he bit on the slant and then recovered to stay on top of the go. And you just don't see that. That's an unbelievable change of direction. And we joke with Bobby a little bit because it was 1 rep, but it showed that the movement skills that a cornerback needs. And Cam Sutton's a guy that in 2014 graded unbelievably, took a step back in 2015, showed well early in 2016 before getting hurt, and just really having this, not a great season because of the injury. Missed a lot of time. But Sutton has a chance in a very deep cornerback class to prove himself. And then they put him all over the field, outside, slot, and a little bit of safety. And he did a nice job covering O.J. Howard on at least 1 rep today. So good job by Cam Sutton. And one other guy I want to highlight. We talked about O.J. Howard at tight end, but Michael Roberts, the tight end from Toledo, is making a push to be the number 2 tight end off the board. He's a guy that body-wise looked like didn't look like he had a great body on tape, and I know that's not what we do.
Check out dudes' bodies? I mean, you check out dudes' bodies, not me, but okay.
Hey, look, it's part of the evaluation process. All I know is he's come here and he's got great length and great body control on contested
biggest
catches.
Hands of any receiver here.
And it shows. He catches the ball. He led the nation in touchdown catches, excellent body control, and catch radius. So all these scouting terms that don't matter unless they do actually show up on tape, and they do with Roberts. I think he just looks really good. Run blocker, gets down the seam with good speed. I think he could be a force at the next level as well.
No, yeah, you mentioned cornerbacks and tight ends there. I think those are easily the two strongest positions at the Senior Bowl. Those are the positions that probably have guys who will be either first or second rounders. There's not a huge amount of talent along the O-line, D-line from what I've seen, but I think those tight ends and corners legitimately have the best players, some of the best players at the position here at Senior Bowl.
I completely agree. It's a very deep cornerback class, both guys here and not here, and then tight end especially. Though there are a lot of talented players there, and some safeties too. Safety is a very interesting position, though most of the elite talent not at the Senior Bowl right now.
One more guy I'll mention because we saw quarterbacks here a season ago. They had Carson Wentz, who was grabbing all the headlines, but Dak Prescott kind of flew under the radar, ended up as the 4th round pick, and now the rest is history. Didn't really impress at the Senior Bowl, but I don't think obviously saying there's another Dak Prescott here is crazy, but I think Nate Peterman, the quarterback of Pitt, has established himself as easily the best quarterback here. Not very hard to do, not a great quarterback class here.
It's been rough, yeah.
But I like what he has in terms of a quick release, accuracy standpoint. Didn't grade out amazingly, but didn't grade out poorly. I think he graded out around where we had Dak Prescott a season ago, which is in the middle range for quarterbacks in this class. That Pitt offense, though, was a little odd. Not an offense that I would say is going to help a quarterback in our grading system. A lot of odd screen passes and sort of stuff like that. That's just not sort of translatable to our grading. But he's been interesting to watch. Probably the best quarterback that I've seen.
Agreed. And I think that's the general consensus down here. And the more evaluators that see Peterman, the more people like him, both within PFF and outside of PFF. So that seems to be the consensus. The Pitt offense, you're absolutely right. They rolled him out about 20% of his dropbacks. That's 4th highest in the nation. And it was a lot of rollouts with a shovel pass or with an option. Just a very quirky offense. So you didn't get to see a lot of reps of just pure drop back NFL type of throws. But he's done a nice job here, goes through his progressions, has a good enough arm. I've been impressed with his accuracy outside the numbers, through a couple good deep comebacks, deep outs, those types of throws. So look, Peterman is getting some hype, in part because I don't think the rest of the guys have been very good, but in part because he has done some nice things, so he deserves that credit so far. He has been the best QB down here.
So we talked about the standouts. Now let's move on to guys that we were expecting something from, but kind of disappointed. Kind of guys who, this isn't a make or break at the Senior Bowl. You're not going to, go undrafted just because you lose a few reps here. But guys who we thought had some potential who just haven't lived up to it at this point. Who would you say fits that bill?
Well, I'm going to go back to corner because, again, it's a deep cornerback class. And these two guys I still think could be pretty good players, but they're struggling here so far. Rasul Douglas out of West Virginia. He's a legitimate 6'2". And you talked about NFL cutoffs and all that stuff. So many teams, the Seahawks, we know how much they love their long corners. There are so many teams that will take almost any 6'2" corner and just try to develop him. So that's Rasul Douglas. He's got that legit 6'2" size, but every time he's in press coverage, he's picking up a flag. I'm telling you, I was on the sideline next to the refs. They were firing flags at him all day today. Just throwing them from all angles. So Rasul Douglas has had a lot of issues in press coverage. He did not play a lot of press coverage at West Virginia, played a lot of off coverage. Excellent in off coverage this year. Had 8 interceptions, I think 9 pass breakups. Very good season. Our top graded Big 12 cornerback this year. Tested quite a bit, but he struggled in press, and that's what teams want to see from that long 6'2" corner. The other guy's Desmond King. We talked about him only being 5'10". He's just gotten beat a few times, and we're talking a guy coming off of 3 excellent years from a production standpoint. Excellent tackler, but a great zone corner in Iowa's scheme. And I think this week was all about him and one-on-one and man coverage. Could he hold up? I think there are still some of those questions because I think his biggest asset is just understanding schemes, understanding routes, good ball skills when the ball's up in the air, but I think he struggled a little bit in one-on-ones.
So do you move a guy like Desmond King, who may have some speed issues, may have some man coverage issues? Would you call him a safety? What do you look for to call someone moving from corner to safety? Because we see it every year. It happens with guys. They're moved from corner to safety. What would you say King, does he profile to a safety at the next level?
There's a lot of buzz about him moving to safety. Or there was a little bit of buzz, and I think it's a lot of buzz. But I've heard it talked about. He's an excellent tackler. He's only missed 8 tackles over the last 3 years at Iowa, which unbelievable ratio of missed tackles to tackles. And that's kind of the basis. If you're going to move a guy to safety, you at least need a tackler, right? You can't just take any bad corner and make him into a safety. So that's good. He's got that foundation. I'm not ready to do that necessarily. The difficulty when we put a big board together is we're doing it in abstract terms. We're not doing it from a team standpoint. I think this cornerback class has a legitimate 10 to 15 guys that can go in those top couple rounds. And given the team boards, they will be all over the place.
Yeah.
So that's where I look at Desmond King. I think in certain schemes, maybe the Texan scheme, they play a lot of off coverage. Teams that play that off coverage and read, maybe Pittsburgh scheme, they might love Desmond King, or they should love Desmond King. Whereas a team that's maybe the Kansas City Chiefs that play a lot of press man, maybe the Patriots who play a lot of press man, even though they switch it up week to week, maybe they're going to drop him down a little bit. So I think that's how you handle a guy like Desmond King who may not fit every scheme perfectly.
I agree with those points. I think from what I've seen, there are a few corners in this class that I would move to safety. Just because of like what you said.
Who do you want to move to safety?
I also like Marlon Humphrey. Marlon Humphrey from Alabama moving to safety just because of those, like you mentioned, the guys playing off coverage. I think being able to play in press, in man coverage is a thing you need as a cornerback. It's basically a basic skill that is somewhat necessary. Every team needs to have that in their arsenal, and if you really can't do that, I'm not willing to waste a first-round pick on you. That's just mine.
So Marlon Humphrey from Alabama, he's another long corner, 6'1". You like him better in off coverage in general? Because he's.
I like him coming forward is more mine. Yeah,
I agree with that. I could see that. And where Humphrey struggles, he's given up 16 yards per catch the last 2 years, which is extremely high. Yeah. It's a very high number. So he's given up a lot of big plays, doesn't find the ball down the field very much. I don't think that's a terrible take to have, that he could play safe, that you like him at safety. But when you have a guy with those tools, 6'1",
I know
they're going to try him as a press corner first.
So we mentioned cornerback class is strong, tight end class is strong. One of the probably weakest positions here, and where I have a bunch of guys that I think have disappointed that I wanted some more from, is basically just all along the defensive line.
All the trenches, right?
All along the defensive line. I thought, they should at least be dominating in the one-on-ones because this is not a strong offensive line class either.
Right.
But they really haven't. I did the grading for I believe it was the North practice today, the first practice of the day. And in the one-on-ones, the offense had more wins than the defense, which is a complete rarity.
Explain how rare that is, because it's one-on-one. There's no... When the defensive line's rushing, there's no gap assignment.
Yes.
You can win. You have a two-way go. Essentially, you can win with any move. There's no scheme. Just win.
You just have to get to a circle about 7 yards deep from the center, and you can go there at any pace you want in any form you like, and the offensive lineman was stopping them. Try to stop someone from going where it's somewhat difficult, and the offensive line did it more than the defense, which was pretty crazy. Have not seen that before in my time grading here. But yeah, so guys that were on that squad that were getting stoned, guys like Chris Wormley out of Michigan. I was a fan of him 2 years ago. I thought he was going to be profiled as a perfect 3-4 type defensive end. Really showed nothing in pass rush so far this week. Vince Beagle, the outside linebacker from Wisconsin. I'm not sure he's won a rep this week that I can remember. He really has gotten just
He won at least one, but it was against a tight end or running back.
Okay, yeah, he won in that drill. But against offensive tackles, he was getting absolutely stoned.
Do you not love him as much as you love Joe Schobert then out of Wisconsin?
No, I'm done on
You wanted Schobert you wanted him in the first round, I think.
I soured at the end. I said second to third, but yeah, Beagle, I'm not even putting Beagle in that sort of range right now. He just has not looked like he has any sort of pass rush repertoire. And then one guy who I know we've loved all year because he was our highest graded edge defender, most productive edge player in the country, Jordan Willis, defensive end, Kansas State. He he's ended up on the ground on a handful of pass rushes. That's always concerning. Just really has some balance issues, plays a little high after he fires off the ball, has a good, first sort of step, but then it's all up top, and if a guy gets his hand on him first, he was done with. So that one kind of worries me because we have him graded highly. We've liked him a lot, but going up against better competition, if he's not going to be able to succeed, that's a question mark.
That's the context part of it, because he played in the Big 12 and destroyed Big 12 right tackles.
Yes.
Some of his best games against Kansas's right tackle and even Texas's right tackle. I mean, he dominated right tackles in the Big 12. And, it's just something.
If you think right tackles are bad in the NFL,
they are. I always say the NFL.
They're 10 times worse than in college. Like, they get. These are not good. Like, there's almost no right tackles in college that end up becoming NFL tackles. It just rarely happens. We've seen.
It's a good point. That's a good point. You take left tackle,
yes.
Right? Every college team
it's
takes
like Tyron Smith, and that's it. In terms of guys who played right tackle,
and it's just because they had Matt Khalil on the other side. Mm-hmm. You take your best offensive tackle, you always put him at left tackle. I don't think you need to do that.
Yeah.
That's a whole different deal. We don't need to do that. Go check out my article from 4 years ago. You don't need to do that, NFL or college, but they do. Mm-hmm. So then the second best pass protector ends up at right tackle, and that's usually an ugly situation. So need to see more from Jordan Willis for sure.
Definitely. But my one big takeaway from this week, and it was my takeaway last year as well, and it just kind of baffles me, is the fact that we just said, we're disappointed in these guys. These guys have stood out. It is 12 reps over the course of a week that you get in one-on-ones. You don't get that much.
It's such a small sample size.
It is still such an incredibly small sample size. And 2 of those reps could come against a guy who may never play a down in the NFL. You are getting these reps against, they're supposed to be the best of the best, but they're not always the best of the best. And we make these big sweeping generalizations. To me, it's still a piece of the puzzle. It's not the whole puzzle. It's still a little bit, it matters a little bit, but I think it gets overblown in general, the importance of the Senior Bowl. If you come away with a guy who's a winner of this week and you move him up a whole round in your board, I think you're just doing it wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it's overrated if you make massive moves in your evaluation process. That's absolutely the point. I think the best thing that comes out of this is confirmation. So last year, Sheldon Rankins was a guy that maybe not everybody had hyped up, and then we had really high grades on him for 2 straight years. He comes down here, had a dominant couple. I think it's great. All it does, though, is if things don't match up, so maybe for Jordan Willis or maybe other guys that are quote-unquote just reevaluate.
Who are the guys here that you would possibly put as first-rounders? Because it's the Senior Bowl. It doesn't always get, a lot of guys who will go top 10, top 15, or just, somewhat of a chance.
Yeah, a lot of the top players skip the Senior Bowl. Phil Savage.
Than even last year.
Agreed.
I'm pretty impressed, yeah.
I mean, they've scouted 300 guys. They work hand in hand with us throughout the fall, too. We jump in
Not
there.
To pat ourselves in the back, but yeah.
I'm just saying, it's a part of the relationship, too. And helps. Of the names that declined the game, you have Jonathan Allen from Alabama. You have 5 guys, Dalton from Michigan. Those are all first-round type of players that declined the game for whatever. Howard, I think he's pretty much a lock. To go. I don't know if anyone else is a lock as far as potential. Do it.
Cody
Whitehair. Tackle the center. So the college left tackle, right, they step right in. And Forrest Lamp has 3 straight years. He's been a top 5 offensive tackle in the nation in our PFF grading. Last year gave up only 4 pressures in his signature game and physical tape, and I do think he'll be in that first round.
Yeah, people are going to turn on his tape and the only holes they're going to is, he didn't play against great competition. It's you.
So you point to the Alabama game.
And then at that one day he had an offensive line class that is admittedly weak.
Yeah, it's very difficult to find first round offensive talent. I think the cornerbacks that we've already talked about today: Tre'Davious White from LSU, Jordan Lewis from Michigan, Desmond King from Iowa. I think they're all in the mix. Even though we call Desmond King a disappointment, 3 years of tape should trump what we've seen this week. Jordan Lewis, the height thing, it's good that he's 5'10", but I also think in the NFL today, you can't have all long corners. I think you need a mix with 2 corners.
Getting beat down the field just as much as length.
I think the 2014 New England Patriots were a good example. 6'3" would take a shiftier, better route runner. Now that's more Malcolm Butler. But they had an answer for every time. Lewis, for me, is the guy that can take on the shiftier route runner. He's a feisty man corner. He works hard from LSU with Tre'Davious White. I think they all have first-round type potential.
I agree. Deeper tools in this class. Not a lot of people have the height. Not a lot of people can move like Antonio Garcia. One of our higher pass blocking grades in the FBS this year. He has that, and he's shown that here. Beaten a few times badly, but man, he can mirror with the best of them at that position. I think he could be moving up, could be a guy who ends up in that sort of range. And then another guy, Cooper Kupp. Why not?
Cooper.
He's as productive as it gets. I know he's a little old. He's either 23 or 24 at the moment, but produced every single chance he got.
Right.
Produced here. I don't know what more you need. It's going to depend, obviously, on how athletic he is at the combine, but
it's not crazy.
It's not crazy.
It's not crazy. I mean, you mentioned two positions that are weak, essentially.
And under the radars type of guys who didn't play against the best competition.
Yeah, Garcia is very interesting. Was not great for us from a run blocking standpoint. But you could definitely see that the pass blocking ability, huge, big size, and all that fun stuff. I think somebody will fall in love with that frame. Cooper Kupp, it's still an outside shot, I think, to put him in the first round. I think his competition there, when you look at wide receiver, I think it's Mike Williams from Clemson, Corey Davis from Western Michigan. I'd put those guys near the top, maybe top half of the first round. And then the next wide receiver off the board, John Ross from Washington. Is it Dede Westbrook from Oklahoma? Is it Cooper Kupp? I mean, I think he is kind of in that conversation. And those are three different styled receivers. Ross more of that deep threat. Westbrook and Kupp more of that good route runner. Westbrook probably has a little bit more burst down the field. But I don't think it's crazy to say maybe he sneaks into the back end of the first round. But it's a bold one. It'd be a bold one if Cooper Kupp did become a first round pick.
Yeah, and there's probably going to be guys that we've just overlooked at this point. Someone may fall in love with, it happens every year, someone that you just didn't expect to go in the first. I could see some other guys ending up there, but
we haven't even had the combine yet.
I was going to say,
we
need to see how guys test. It's so early in the process, so it's been fun here. That's it for us today. We'll be back, me and Sam, Monday doing a little preview of the Super Bowl, talking about both the Atlanta Falcons and the New England Patriots. I hope you enjoyed it. A little preview of what you'll be getting this offseason in terms of free agency talk, draft talk from me and Steve. Have a good one.